Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again on Beauty for Ashes. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Juanita Jones, and I have decided to share my testimonies in the form of story times on a weekly basis. You can catch a new story every Tuesday, which I call Testimony Tuesday, where I am giving you real stories about real hope and real redemption about God's goodness in my life over the course of many decades. I want to say almost 5 decades now. And I am grateful and thankful that I am able to sit here and say that I look nothing like the things that I have been through or have endured. And it is my commission to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with those of you that are led to watch my journey. And it's going to be a journey. Trust and believe. There's so much that I have to share, so much that needs to be said. And it has taken me a long time to get to this place of being comfortable enough in my own skin to be able to share the things that God has brought me through. I'm actually going to be breaking them down in different series based on whatever it is that I am led to share. So this first volume of stories that I am sharing is in regards to God being a protector over my life and over those that are connected to me. So it's not just necessarily going to be just about me, but about the things that God has done through me, with me, and for me. So this week's story, I'm actually going to be going way back into my mental Rolodex in order to share with you something that I still to this day find to be just bona fide miraculous that God did this for me as a shield of protection. And this goes back, I want to say, probably 35 years, maybe a little bit longer. But it takes place when I was actually still living in Washington, D.C. For those of you who don't know or have not watched any of my prior videos, I am originally a Washington, D.C. native. I was born and raised there, and I went to a private school I went to private schools from first grade all the way through until about the 10th grade when I moved to North Carolina, which was shared in a different story. But one of the particular schools that I went to when I was in junior high school, it was the type of school where we went on many field trips. The majority of the field trips we went on weren't just one-day field trips, but they were actual overnighters as well as week-long to 2-week-long adventures. The school just believed in not just reading about the things that we learned about, but actually having us as young adults, as teenagers, get an opportunity to learn about those things that we're actually reading about. That came in the form of us actually going on excursions, so to say. So one of the particular trips I went on, I want to say I was probably in the 9th grade. I can't quite remember, but it was around that time, maybe 9th or 10th grade. And one of the trips we went on was whitewater rafting. This was something that we did on a pretty regular basis every year. We went whitewater rafting, skiing, fishing, biking, hiking, camping, you name it. If it was anything adventurous, as teenagers, we were exposed to these type of adventures. So on this particular trip, it was a camping / whitewater rafting type of trip. And we were one day heading to do whitewater rafting, and all of us as students were assigned a raft buddy. So it was myself and another young man. For the sake of protection, I'm just going to call him Patrick. So Patrick and I happened to be assigned to one, and it turned out, by the way, it's supposed to be whitewater rafting, but it ended up being canoes for some reason. I'm not sure I've ever heard of whitewater canoeing, but just go with it. That's what we were in. It was supposed to be rafts. It ended up being canoes. So we ended up being assigned to a canoe, and then there were several other groups of students as well as the adults that were on the trip that were assigned to their particular canoe. Well, once we got all of our gear, our equipment, such as our life vests, helmets, the oars, everything that we needed basically to go into the canoe with us, we were supposed to pull our canoes to the side dock of where the water entrance was, and then everyone was supposed to actually go in together. This was some very rough, rugged water, but it was something that we were all used to. It wasn't something that we had never done before. So none of us were new at this particular venture. It was just the fact that the current was way stronger than any of us expected. So when Patrick and I put our canoe towards the edge of the water, we got in and we just sat there to where it was just enough to where you know you can. For those of you that are familiar with whitewater rafting or canoeing, you can stick your oar in the side and kind of just push off. From that point, you have one person in the front, one person in the back. One person is typically steering, the other person is just leading the direction of whichever way the vessel is supposed to turn. So we were all very well versed in how to operate this canoe. And I don't know why it wasn't a raft, but we were all well versed in how to operate the canoes. So Patrick and I get in our canoe. We see everybody else, getting ready. We were all lining them up, kind of parallel to each other, but on a slant so that we could kind of just go in the water in that type of direction. I hope that makes sense. But we got a really hard gush of water that came in that swept under. It was almost like it instantly, for somehow, some way, it instantly eroded the dirt that was underneath the canoe that Patrick and I was in, and it swept us in. When that happened, when the wave came in, it swept under us to the point to where we couldn't control where our canoe was going, although we were partially still on land. And it pushed us in so fast to the point nobody behind us, because there were still people trying to get their canoes in. They were stepping in their canoes so we all could go as a group. That didn't happen with Patrick and I. The water came in so fast that it pushed our canoe full force into the water. Thankfully, we happened to already still have our oars. We had those in hand, waiting for the rest of the group. So we were quick to, as we're flying into this water, we both were caught off guard. I happened to have my life vest on. It was already snapped in. My backpack was next to me. I remember I had a jacket that I had tied onto the seat next to me because it typically gets kind of chilly out in that type of water. And Lord knows I cannot for the life of me remember where this was. Actually, guys, I do remember it was West Virginia, in the middle of the boonies on the East Coast, wherever we was. So we got instantly swooshed down this water, and I mean, it was going full force. And I could hear Patrick behind me, because I was in the front, Patrick was in the back, and I remember him saying, "Whoa, oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And I'm telling him, okay, well, we gotta steer. We gotta hurry up and try to get to the side. And that didn't happen. This water was so forceful that it flew us into this big boulder. We had no time to navigate, no time to steer, no time to do anything. And this all happened, from what the group told us, this happened in a matter of less than 5 minutes. We were gone. We were 1 minute on the bank, and the next minute they saw us flying down this water. And as we're going down the water, we could hear people behind us screaming because of how fast we just took off. But we went down so far, and we're trying to get it together, trying to steer. There was no way for us to steer in that particular water. Whatever was going on with that water at the time, it felt supernatural. Again, I've mentioned this in my other videos. There are some things that I will mention that will probably go over your head, especially if you are not spiritually in tune, if you don't know that life is spiritual, that there is always a rhyme and a reason for everything that transpires in our life. Whether we see it in the natural or not, there's always a purpose and a root to every situation. In this particular situation, it just, the way it happened was, it just felt like 1 minute we're still and the next minute we just took off, and we have no idea how or why. But we ended up going down this water so fast to the point to where we found ourselves head first with this big boulder that was just sitting in the middle of the water, and there was no way for us to navigate around it. And we ended up hitting head first into this boulder. the canoe, the top of the canoe, the front of the canoe, it did, thank God it didn't smash to pieces, but it went up. It like ramped up because rocks are slippery in the water. So it kind of slid and ramped up. And Patrick and I flew out of the canoe into this very deep white water. All I know is I see myself, I felt myself, I saw myself flipping out of the canoe. I slightly saw Patrick flying out behind me. Instantly panic hits. We are swimmers, but we're not the best of swimmers, especially in white water, put it that way. Still water, yeah, we can handle our own. When it comes to white water, that's a little bit different. It's very difficult to navigate against that type of current when it's that strong. I'm not Michael Phelps. I'm not an athletic swimmer. I swim enough to be able to save my life. And all of us knew enough to be able to do that without, putting ourselves in any type of danger if it was not in that type of water. That's the thing. So how the adults decided that it would be a good idea to take a bunch of teenagers down some white water without really knowing the rush of the current or how it was operating that particular day, but over my head, that's beyond me. I have no idea how that was decided, but it was decided and we were in that water. So we both flip out of this canoe. I instantly feel myself, I'm pulled down into this water going, I don't know how many miles an hour. And I'm feeling myself going backwards. I flipped the opposite direction when my body hit the water. And I'm head first going down the water this way when I should be flipped going this way, if that makes any sense. So I do remember my training that we all got safety training, safety precautions given to us prior to us taking any of these daredevil type trips. And I remember an instructor telling us, anytime you catch yourself in this type of water, or if you ever fall out, please remember to try to flip yourself around so that your feet first. That way you can kind of navigate and see where you are. And so your head don't hit against some massive boulder like what we ran into. And instantly that kicked in. I remember that even though I was in a panic and I was underwater, by the way. I couldn't see anything, but I did remember that much. So I remember while I'm swirling, I flipped myself around under the water to where my feet was heading the right direction. I'm still flying. Every now and then my head was bopping up, so I was able to real quick scan where I was going. And my head popped up and I happened to be very quickly looking around to see if I could get a grasp of where I was located. And there was no sign of Patrick in the very few seconds that I had when my head bobbing up and down through the water. Then at an instance, I felt myself get pulled, like something grabbed my leg and dragged me under the water. And I'm caught in what's called a hydraulic, that where it's an underwater tornado, so to say. I felt myself, I saw myself under the water just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I saw the surface going further and further and further away. And I said, in my head, now imagine a teenage girl that 1 minute ago was just on the shore waiting on the rest of her group to get ready to go into this water and have this fun adventure. And I go from that to sheer panic in a matter of what felt like me in seconds. So back in that moment where I'm caught in this underwater tornado, sorry if I'm kind of skipping over my words. I'm just also trying to remember vividly while I'm giving the story. So bear with me, guys. But I felt myself swirling underneath this water, and I see as I'm looking up, I'm being pulled under. And I remember as clear as I'm sitting here telling the story, an audible voice telling me, take off the jacket. I had on the life jacket. And this is something I will never in my lifetime forget, because that's how significant it was in my life and how much I recognized later as I was growing, how God protected me even when I didn't know it was him protecting me. So I remember hearing an audible voice, take off the jacket now. And I remember being underwater, unsnapping this jacket. I had not yet put the pull part around me. So I remember just unsnapping the 2 snaps that was at the top. And I took my arms out. And when I did that, I lifted up. I popped up to the top of the water. It was as if the life jacket itself, even though it's supposed to protect you, it was keeping me bobbling down while I'm feeling my leg being pulled. I have no earthly idea what it was, I have no clue what that possibly could have been that was pulling on my leg. And it was my left leg in particular. It was like just nagging, pulling at my leg. And when I did that, when I pulled the jacket off, my body instantly popped up like a bobble. And I popped up at the top of the water, and I felt myself, I was able to finally stay up top so I could see and get my bearings. I'm still flying down this water, by the way, still trying to keep up with where am I, what is going on, where are the rocks? And I have no earthly idea how I was able to physically do this, only that it was a bona fide miracle that an angel or so I have to say it had to be my guardian angel that was with me. I somehow, some way swam against the current that was massively strong. I swam against the current towards the right side of the bank. And it wasn't very close. It was huge. It was massive. And it was a ton of white water. But I somehow, some way, by the grace of God, had to be God. Nobody but God. I'm not going to give anything or anybody credit but God. I swim against the current. Keep in mind, I'm not an athletic swimmer at all. And I was able to swim against the current across the riverbank across the river to get to the riverbank. And there were people sitting on the side that did not bother to help me. They saw me. And they told me when I finally pulled myself out the water enough to collect my mind and to collect my nerves, that they was like, oh yeah, we saw you out there. And they literally just stood there and watched me almost drown. And that's as far as I'm going to go with the type of people they were. They basically was just going to watch me drown. They weren't trying to help. It devastated me that you literally was going to watch me drown. Nobody was going to even attempt to try to help me. No. And they made it clear they weren't going to help me. Because I just wasn't their type of person. Let's just put it that way. I'm keeping it very PC. So I felt automatically uneasy after going through such a traumatic ordeal. And then finding myself on the side of a riverbank with a bunch of people that did not look like me, that made it very clear they had no intentions in helping me, but they found it amusing that I was out there drowning. And so I found myself running down the riverbank away from them. And again, that was the grace of God that they didn't do anything to me. But I saw Patrick, because I'm instantly looking for Patrick. I'm looking for the canoe. And Patrick was about a quarter of a mile down from me on the opposite side of the riverbank, because I'm hearing him scream my name. And as I'm jogging away from these crazy people, I make my way down and I see him, but of course I can't get to him because he's on the opposite side. And we both see the canoe. I finally got to a place to where the water kind of tapered off a little bit. It wasn't as strong. And so the canoe, of course, was flipped over. All of our belongings was gone, except for my jacket that happened to be knotted to the seat that I was sitting in. And I ran down far enough to where I was directly across from Patrick. He is over there crying, screaming. Now, he's a guy, but we're kids. And I guess at that point, God had me calm enough to where I was able to think clearly, to be able to keep myself calm so I wouldn't go into shock. And I was standing across, we're yelling, screaming across at each other, of course. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Are you scratched? Are you this? Are you that? It is nothing but a bona fide miracle that there was nothing wrong with us but a couple of bruises and scratches. So about 10 minutes passed and we see my principal come down with the other kids and the other chaperones. Now, mind you, we're thinking this happened in a matter of seconds because that's how fast we got off the bank from where everybody else was sitting. And we had a literal it was either between a 10 to 15 minute wait in between when we saw everybody else come up, because they were all looking for us. That was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And I've lived through some rough stuff. That there's no words that I really can even put together to describe how traumatizing that is, to go through something like that and know you made it out on the other end, literally with just scratches and a couple of bruises, when you know you've encountered something that the average person probably wouldn't have lived through. So everybody shows up, and of course they split off. There were a few canoes that went to Patrick's side and a few that stopped on my side. My principal ended up stopping on my side. And of course they, checked me, made sure I was okay. They saw the people that I passed by, and they said they asked them, had they seen me? And of course they told them, yeah, she ran that way. That's a whole nother story as to what happened with that part. They got up to us, they saw we were okay, and they proceeded, of course, to just check on us. Took us, we got in their canoes, and they ended up taking us to first aid to have us checked out. Found our canoe. They got the canoe aside. Somebody actually had to swim into the middle when it got down to a certain point to where the water was calm. A couple of people swam in, got our canoe, dragged it back over, and of course our stuff was gone except for my jacket. But mentally, we were shot. Then it triggered me what I had just went through, and me thinking, what the heck was holding on to my leg under that water? That freaked me out more so than just the water itself. It was the fact that I was caught spinning underwater and something was pulling my left leg. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I was no good for the rest of that trip. And I think I had 3 more days on that trip. And I had to get back in the water for us to get to our campsite again. I was done. And here's the funny part. I don't remember them calling my parents. I don't remember them calling my mom. I don't remember them calling my dad. My sister at the time was also a guardian that was on my paperwork. I don't remember them calling anybody to let them know that a major incident had transpired, but that I was okay. But, keep in mind, this was also in the very early 90s. So things were different then. I'm very surprised, actually, that I was on those types of trips as a young teenage girl. But nevertheless, it was something that I experienced, and I wanted to share to just basically let you all know that even in the midst of something as simple and as innocent as a whitewater canoe ride, God was there with me. I had an inkling that God was there. You know how God is there, but you really don't have a relationship with him, so to say. That is where I was at that time as a young teenage girl. I was just living my life and enjoying myself. And that was one of those moments that God took me back to as a full grown woman and reminded me, yeah, that was me. I was there protecting you when the enemy was trying to take your life out, when he had an opportunity. He felt like he had an opportunity to take you out, but I was there to safely guard you and cover you and to give you the wisdom to do what you needed to do to save your life in the moment when it could have been gone in an instant. So that is one story that I hope I'm not perseverating, and I apologize if I am saying things over and over again, but I'm just trying to drive the point home that God is so amazing. And time again, he proves to me that he is with me and for me, and not just with me, but with everybody that is around me and connected to me. I make sure that when I give praise and honor and glory, when I say my prayers, I thank him for not just covering me, but for covering those around me and even those that I don't know. Because that is what the salt of the earth is supposed to do. That's what believers are. We are salt and light in the earth, and it is our commission to cover and protect those that don't even know they need covering and protecting. So I thank God for the prayers the righteous at that time in my life. I thank God for the covering that my mother had on me, my sister-in-law might have had on me, my brother at the time. Anybody that has said a prayer of covering and protection over my life, I am so grateful for them. So I want to say a quick prayer of protection over you before I end this story. So Father, in the name of Jesus, thank you for your love, your grace, and your protection. Seen and unseen, Lord, dangers that we have no idea that we are surrounded in or in the middle of, Lord. I thank you for covering us and keeping us safe from all hurt, harm, or endangerment. There's absolutely no weapon formed against any of us or anyone that is watching this right now that shall ever prosper, Lord. And I give you praise, honor, and glory, and thank you for your goodness and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. I pray, as choppy as this story might have been, that it has been a blessing to you. And I will definitely be back next Tuesday with another testimony of God's goodness. And continuing also in the series of him being my protector, because there are so many more stories to come before I head into the next chapter of my testimony. So much love to you all. Till next time. Bye.